Welcome to the CX Sessions from the Customer Experience Innovation Institute. Every episode, we provide an innovative perspective on customer experience from the people who are changing your world, one experience at a time.
Hi, and welcome back to CX Sessions from Melbourne, Australia. I'm your host, Simon Chris, and joining me today, also from Melbourne, is John Stavrakis. John, welcome to the CX Sessions.
Thanks, Simon. It's great to be with you.
Before we do anything else, because we are both here in Australia, I like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we meet and pay my respects to their elders past and present. John, I want to start. You have a really interesting job title right now. Explain the job title.
So the job title is Product Owner AI Efficiency at Aware Super. So it's a recent change for me earlier this year. So it's we're investing, obviously moving to the AI, not new to most people. Everyone's sort of looking at that at the moment and really trying to, particularly from a contact center perspective, is invest some time and effort in some proof of concepts in terms of what that looks like for the contact center space within our business. What does it mean for our people? What does it mean from an efficiency perspective? So really just trying to build that out and building a bit of a roadmap. So quite exciting because I'm a bit of a self-confessed geek on these areas, even though I've been in the contact center game for a long, long time. And I think it's a really exciting place for us to be from an industry perspective. So really keen to be getting my teeth into it and working with some really good people across the sector. Yeah,
and look, it's a job role after my own heart. Anything that brings CX and AI together is right where I want to be. So it's great to meet somebody who actually has to deliver that stuff in their role. There's a lot of people playing with it around the edges, so that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Let's go back a little though. How did you get to be where you are? What was your CX journey?
Well, like all good people in CX and contact centers, I woke up one morning and thought, yes, this is where I want to be. No, I joke, of course. So actually, my background is actually as a behavioralist psychologist through study. I actually thought I was going to be a criminologist. That's what I got into at Melbourne Uni, and deferred that study and got into working at contact centers, as most people did in the day. Yep. And it sort of morphed and evolved from there within the contact center space. I've been in the contact center industry going on 26 years now. So a long, long time through many different businesses. And the one thing that I found, particularly with my background in the behavioral sciences, is a lot of that knowledge can be easily transferred into the contact center space, not just with the people that work within that, but how we deliver great customer experiences to our people. What does the language within conversation need to look like within that space? How do we design processes that can deliver on that? So that's how the career sort of morphed. It's probably not where I thought I would have been coming out of university, but wouldn't change it. Absolutely love it. Contact centers are really nuanced environments. There's a lot of complexity and great diversity within those environments. And you're dealing with the public in very different ways. So being able to respond to that and understand what I call those moments of truth when customers are contacting you in those moments, and having your people who are engaging just with voice. So what we're doing now with video, we don't have that in most contact centers. So you miss that key part of communication. How do you create those really great connections? Just gets me up in the morning. Absolutely love it. So I think being able to do that in a contact center space has been really important and instrumental for me personally, but I think what I can also deliver for the business I've had the pleasure of representing as well.
Okay, so a lot of people kind of start out in the contact center as a job, and then suddenly it becomes a career. Where did that happen for you? What was that moment of awareness where you thought, hang on, I could make a career out of this?
Oh, so the tough questions now, Simon. I think, look, I started many, many years ago at Foxtel. That was my very first contact center role in Moonee Ponds. So for any of your international listeners, it's a subscription television service here in Australia. There was a lot of acquisition in the early days of the market here in Australia. Then when I first got my first leadership role, which would have been a couple of years into my time at Foxtel, and I started to see how my educational background could be deployed, but also how I was having some impact with people and teams and what I was doing at the customer level. I started thinking, this could actually work. This could be something that I could do moving forward. This is something that I actually enjoy. And those opportunities kept on coming forward. And I spent a good part of my early career at Foxtel, almost 7 years at Foxtel. And I still say to this day, it's probably one of the best training grounds I had, and exposed me to many different projects and experiences within that. So probably as I left that environment, I started to think, yeah, I can make a go of this. I think I can add some really, really positive value to organizations. So yeah, just kept on going.
Wow. Okay. And what does CX mean for you? I mean, in your mind, where does CX start and where does it stop? I mean, choose any industry, but where do you think it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, for me, I think it's quite nuanced. I mean, I know when we talk about CX, generally we're talking about that interaction with the customer and different deliverables within that interaction. I actually think, and this goes also to some of the challenges I think that we have around CX, I think it actually starts at the onboarding of staff. So I think it starts a lot earlier within that process in terms of how we're bringing our staff on within the business. What is that connection that we are creating for our staff with the brand, with our value proposition, with the experience? Are we talking about those things and ticking the box, because that's what our induction and our training programs are, versus creating genuine connection to the deliverable of that value proposition to the CX delivery and what that means at an experience level. I'm not sure sometimes we make those connections quite tangible for people, and people are learning as they go in terms of what that means. So, and I mentioned before, connecting to moments of truth. Being in the contact center space, and we have lots of data within contact centers, within the first 10 to 20 seconds of a conversation, most customers are telling you one of the key reasons why they're calling, and they will reference it in some type of frustration. But it's about picking up the nuance of that conversation, which I think is really important, and then having that connection to that brand's value proposition. Can I identify that moment of truth? Can I connect to the value proposition, and can I bring that together to deliver for that customer in a meaningful way? We've all seen frontline staff that can deliver on that really, really well, but we've also seen where that's not connected as well. So I think it's how do we bring that together? So for me, it means having people that are so intertwined into that value proposition of that organization and they know what that means. They know what language they need to be using. Their connection to brand language and how they deliver on that becomes really important. So I think that's what it means for me, is we're really trying to bring that together.
Okay. How would that play off then in your mind, where people are wanting to outsource or offshore pretty much mostly for cost arbitrage reasons, right?
Yeah.
So, then they're almost kind of going to lower paid staff. How does that play out in your head?
Yeah, look, that is true. And having been in BPOs as well, I know that that is a key area of the sector as well. For me personally, I actually don't think that necessarily that value proposition and the connection to the experience needs to be divorced, whether it's in-house or outsourced. I think probably greater engagement of the organization outsourcing into that BPO and creating great relationships with the people and really trying to sell their story and create that connection. I think that becomes really critically important. Having been on the government side as well, I think that connection between government policy and to the citizen, but then also the citizen as a customer and what that actually means and bringing that together. I think they're really interesting concepts in bringing that together on the government side as well. But it's really bringing that outsourced resource into your value proposition. I don't think there's a significant difference in terms of how you deliver on that. It's really about trying to make sure you connect it in a meaningful way. And I think, we know there's lots of there's copious amounts of studies out there that talk about why the people or staff stay in businesses or leave businesses, and pay is in there, but it's not always top of the list. It's within the list, but not top of the list. If you can make those meaningful connections, pay almost becomes a secondary item or a third item. So how do we create those connections with our people?
More kind of a hygiene factor, I guess.
More of a hygiene. Yeah, correct. Yeah, great way of saying it. Yeah, correct.
Okay. So what are you seeing out in the CX industry right now? And I'm happy to talk about highs if you're seeing highs, or lows if you're seeing lows. Like, are there big challenges or are there big opportunities? What are you seeing in the CX industry?
You're probably not going to be surprised that I'm going to talk about AI.
Okay.
I think that's one of the challenges. I think everyone is so, for lack of a better way of saying it, infatuated with AI and what AI can deliver for business and where that can take the customer experience. What does that then look like? I think that is a big push from a direction perspective, but also one of the challenges that we need to truly understand some of the capabilities of AI and how that can deliver real value for business. Where do those efficiencies actually come from? Where do they derive from? But also, how do they then integrate back into the business? So, one of the comments I've been making to many people recently within my current role is, for me, AI is not just about the tech. In inverted commas, that's the easy part in terms of turning it on. It is the identifying the downstream impacts, the operational changes that need to occur, the role redefinitions that need to occur to support the AI transition.
Yep.
I think if we don't get that right and we don't look at it sequentially, so what is the right order of events that we need to be putting in place to deliver on a really great AI experience that won't be seen as an adverse impact at the customer level, but also as an adverse impact to the employee level, because there are anxieties around that as well, which could also then impact your CX deliverable. How do you bring that together in a meaningful way so that way everyone's on board in that journey? What does that look like? One of the comments I've been making is, let's not be too quick to rush into it. We know people are moving at pace, but let's be mindful about the way we go about doing that, so that way we deliver successfully, not just deliver for the sake of delivering.
And it's interesting you mentioned people are moving at pace. I think they're talking at pace.
Probably a better way of saying it. Talking at pace. Talking at pace. Yeah, correct.
I said to somebody the other day, it's a little bit like teenage romance. Everybody's talking about it and everybody thinks everybody else is doing it, but actually hardly anyone's doing it. And those that are doing it, half of them are doing it wrong and without protection. So it's just kind of, it's a little bit like that. Everyone thinks everyone is moving at pace, but the tech is moving at pace.
The tech is definitely moving at pace.
Business adoption is not quite there. What else are you seeing? What other challenges out there in a post-COVID environment, say, are you seeing?
Yeah, look, I think there's some of the challenges that we're seeing post-COVID is around how do we differentiate from one brand to the other. Most industries deliver similar services or similar offerings. It's, what's the secret sauce that people pull out of the top of it that actually make it stand out? I think where we're looking at the moment is as each individual organization, how do we stand out from this? What makes us different? What is that unique difference? Because, and I'm not sure as a consumer where sometimes I see whether that is overly clear. At times, maybe you go with the bigger brand, the brand the one you trust. That may not always necessarily be the right path. Maybe there are others out there that are providing a better experience. But sorry, I'm losing it now. Simon, so what am I trying to say? I might have to come back to it. Might have to repeat it. Give me a sec.
That's fine. What about staff? We're having a lot of talking about people having issues with staffing. Are you finding that? And if so, at what level, or what do you think's driving that?
Yeah, the fight for talent is a challenge. The market is very, very tight. That is absolutely the case. I think one of the things that we probably need to look more broadly is what does attraction of good staff actually look like? Is it just about dollars and cents in terms of being market competitive? Is it about hybrid versus fully remote versus being on site? Is that still a challenge that we need to overcome? Is it, as I mentioned earlier on, the way we onboard our staff and have them ready for the work they need to be doing? Training, are we training for adults, or are we doing the same training that we were doing 20 years ago?
Yeah.
What does that look like? I think there are different layers that we need to be looking at from an attraction perspective to staff and how we bring them on board. But also, how well are we connecting the recruitment process to the demographic we're serving as well? Is there a disconnect there as well, based on your particular target markets? And I think sometimes we probably don't get that 100% right either in terms of connecting the people we're hiring to the people we're serving, and maybe there's creating some friction within those demographics as well. So I think there are multiple layers that we need to be looking at. My view is, I think that in 2024 it's going to get a little bit easier. 2023 was very difficult, I think, from getting really good talent into the business. Or any business, from even people that I was talking to. But I think as we move down a changing of the guard to some degree in terms of how to phrase it from an AI perspective, and looking at AI enabled roles, and what does that then look like? I think different skill sets will be sought after and brought in.
I wanted to pick that up. You've used the word connection quite a lot, and if I connect your role and what you said earlier about downstream changes to the business with how, or the types of talent that we're looking for. Personally, I think the role is going to become more complex with AI.
Agree.
Not from an IQ perspective, but from an EQ perspective, because, yes, generative AI can pretend to have empathy, but only a human really can do it. But the big change, it would seem to me, and I'd welcome your opinion, is right now, 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10 calls are as simple as, where are the toilets in Heathrow Airport? And only 2 or 3 of the calls are actually big, meaty, beefy calls. In an AI-empowered world, a lot of those simple calls go away. And so your agents are 8, 9 out of 10 calls are going to be big, beefy calls. That's going to change who you use, is it not?
Definitely will, I think. Absolutely. I think what I see happening is the higher EQ requirement within roles will become really apparent in terms of how we do that. The complexity of conversation will change and will be enhanced. So we need probably higher skilled resources or individuals to be able to deal with the complexity of those conversations. Absolutely, we'll need to be looking at doing that, which I think then from a onboarding perspective, a connection perspective, the way we bring on our people, the way we educate our staff to deliver on that will become, it will change completely. It'll be a complete 360 flip in terms of what we do today, where as most contact centers, we get people in 2-3 weeks in a classroom, high content delivered to them, probably not a lot of what would be classified as soft skills, even though that's a personal term that I don't like to use because I think they're hard skills to learn. And then off in the world they go, and we wish them all the best of luck, and we do the traditional coaching and support of that. Yeah. I think we move almost to more of a university type of program where you've got AI-enabled online learning with tutorial type education to really build the strength and skill set. They move into segmented roles to become experts in those areas, and we use AI systems to direct that complicated activity into those segmented roles and slowly build from that. So we'll have far more specialization, I think, within contact center environments to really build up that skill set, not generalists, which is what we have for the most part. And I think that's where the real value will evolve within the CX space as well.
Yeah, wow. Do you think in the future CX staff, particularly call center agents, are going to have to be AI aware or do you think the systems are going to be so intuitive that it doesn't matter anymore?
Oh, I wish I had a crystal ball to tell you that one. Look, I do think they need to be AI aware. I think there needs to be a level of comfort with AI and what that happens. So today, in most contact centers, I know everyone talks about Copilot and augmented agents and what that then looks like. And some contact centers have a next best conversation type tool which they use, and there'll be different levels of adoption within those tools. There's challenges even with that in having an agent have something prompted to them on screen and engaging with that in a meaningful way, making it sound coherent and easy as part of the conversation. It just flows nicely. Where you have a augmented environment for an agent where there's different information popping up or different instructions or different leads, interactivity, we're going to need to think about how we train differently to deliver on that objective. I'm not sure anyone's really got it solved at this point. I think there's going to be a bit of test and learn in terms of what that is, which is why I think there's going to be specialization within a contact center space, because I don't think it can be a one-size-fits-all approach. I think you will need to be specialist in one area so the information is relevant and I can have that conversation rather than a bit of everything.
I love that you call it test and learn. I have this funny feeling a lot of things with AI are going to be trip over and learn. A little bit like snow skiing. You mentioned that you wished you had a crystal ball. Well, I'm going to kind of push on that a little bit.
Yeah.
And ask you to look into your crystal ball. Where is all this going? Where are we going to see ourselves in the next few years around? And you can take a 2-year, a 5-year, 10-year horizon. I don't mind. Where do you think we're going to be? What's it going to look like?
Well, I definitely believe that AI will be well integrated into our world. I don't think that's happening in the next 2 to 3 years. I think it's a 5-year plus journey. I think there's a lot that still needs to be learned and understood within that space, but also how we bring our staff and new staff into that environment and engage them within that. And using your terminology, Simon, there will be some trips along the way, and we'll learn from that, and we'll revise from there. But I'll put my money on 5 years from now. Most contact center environments will be well into the AI journey, if not deployed augmented realities or augmented experiences within the frontline environment. I would hazard a guess and say that the IVRs that we have, our traditional DTMF IVRs, will mostly be going away. What I would classify as first generation NLP IVRs will be more of what we do before we look at what Gen AI IVRs look like. I know there are some that talk about having Gen AI. I'm not too sure whether it's true Gen AI at this point, but I think that's where we'll go. So I would hazard a guess that five plus years from now, there'll be Gen AI type components. And now from a customer experience perspective, it would be really about having that conversation where how is the AI delivering great customer experience? What is that doing? Or is it just deflecting into another environment? And is that deflection positive customer experience versus the conversations that remain? I know there's conversation as well around impacts to resourcing and FTE and whether there'll be savings or not within that. I would say at this point, I'm a bit on the fence of whether I think there will be some genuine FTE saving. I think in terms of some of the complexity and length and breadth of conversation that will be occurring, my gut feel is that we probably won't see the shift in FTE that some assumptions have been out there. I think it will be, if not the same, more to deliver on that. I guess time will tell whether my crystal ball is right.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned too about the getting rid of the humans, as they put it. Everybody touts that. So the newspapers all tout that story of the one Indian call center where he sacked all of the workers.
Yep.
When you dig underneath that, it was only a 28-seat environment anyway, and it was supporting an online app. So it probably shouldn't have needed 28 right from the start. Yep. The interesting bit after the follow-on from the story is he rehired half of those people.
Yeah, I haven't heard that one. Yeah,
so I'm with you. I'm on the fence a little because you're playing in AI. If someone that was listening to this was going, look, I hear the AI stuff, I want to be involved, what should be the first couple of things they should do?
Definitely dive in and start to educate yourself on what's actually happening in the AI space. Like there's lots of different podcasts out there. There's a great podcast which I actually posted on LinkedIn a couple of days ago around called Leveraging AI. There's some great insight that comes out of that in terms of what we could be looking at or should be looking at. I think, tap into your vendor partners. I mean, one of the first things that I did, even in this new role, is I started to have lots of conversations with our vendor partners around where are they thinking about AI? How are they deploying that? What does that then look like? How could we potentially leverage that? And then don't be afraid to start thinking about what does a proof of concept look like? Start testing what this could be and learning from that, and start to put a bit of a roadmap in terms of what that looks like. I think we need to accept the fact that it's here and that we need to be moving into it. Putting the blinkers up and thinking that it's not going to impact me, or maybe it's something that happens down the track, I think is not a sound approach. Start reading, listening, talking to people like yourself, Simon, and others in the sector that are sharing lots about AI and what they're thinking about doing, and start to engage, start to really get into it. One of the very first things I did 12, 18 months ago when ChatGPT first became big news item, I got onto it and just started playing on the prompts, started learning about what does prompt design and prompt engineering actually look like. I've done some courses to actually understand what that is. And as I've gotten more into it over the last 18 months or so, I have a greater appreciation of the nuanced environment that AI actually is and what needs to be considered in actually planning for it and moving it forward. Because it's not just a technology solution. There's broader business implications. There's operational impacts, downstream impacts that need to be considered as well. So we need to start having that conversation and talking about it. And one of the things I'll share as well. So one of the things that I started doing a while back is started sharing my own thinking around AI quite significantly on LinkedIn, because I wasn't seeing that much sharing happening other than technology vendors, and all respect to the technology vendors. I love them. I love the ones that we work with. But it's about just start to share the thinking. If you don't know, invite conversation. And I think that's a really good way to start.
Yeah, that's great sage advice, except for the bit about talk to me, because I talked to me the other day and it wasn't a very enjoyable experience talking to myself.
I always enjoy talking to you, Simon.
All right, let's shift gears. I have a few questions that I love to ask everybody as we wrap up, and I'll be interested in your answers. The first one is, what makes a great experience for you when John is out down the street, in the shop, in the movie theater, getting his hair cut, whatever? What's a great customer experience for you?
Yeah, considering everything that I've just talked about, I think it might be a little bit different than what most people would be expecting. For me, a great experience is something that, and I use the term deliberately from my perspective, because I'm naturally an introvert, even though I am extroverted when it comes to work and what I do, and obviously being on with you today. A great experience for me is when it feels like it's not invasive. Things are happening naturally. So whether you're at a restaurant or a cafe or a bar, or it's a free-flowing, easy experience. Like when you go to the restaurant and the water's always topped up. They're there when you need them to order your food. You're not having to struggle to get something happening. And then the company you're with, you can just enjoy that company, and it just feels really nice and easy. For me, that's a great experience where it doesn't feel like I have to battle to get the other things that have to happen around that experience working for me.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's a very human element to your experience. If you could go back and, you mentioned you've been around the industry for a couple of decades. If you could go back and give your younger self some great advice about CX or about the CX journey, what would that advice be?
Yeah, it's a great question. I've mentioned about identifying moments of truth. I think I only learned that a lot older in my career. So as probably 10 to 15 years within that, I started to realize what that was. So from that advice for me when I was being younger would be listen more and understand what moments of truth are within CX rather than just looking at the transaction. I think it was very transaction focused when I first started within the contact center space. How do you complete X task? How do you make it as efficient as possible? And for those that are listening that are in contact centers, thinking about your average handle times and all those type of things that sit within contact centers, that's where the focus was originally. As I got older and started to realize that the customers are actually telling you something that's really important. And if you can identify that really quickly, you can provide a great customer experience. But then as I moved into leadership roles, is then the coaching on that became really important. And I learned that a little bit later within my leadership journey as well. So going back to my younger self is focus on that, identify that, pay attention to that.
Fantastic. Great advice. Great advice for anybody at this point. The third one is what book you're reading, what podcast you're listening to, what's influencing you right now?
I mentioned Leverage AI, which is a podcast, which I do listen to a hell of a lot. I've also started rereading Simon Sinek's book, The Infinite Game, which I love that book. I've got the audio of that as well. So when I'm on the train traveling to work, I can listen to it as well. And I love the way how he argues how organization can sometimes be obsessed with short-term goals rather than looking at what their true goal is, what the position is, because you're never winning. You're constantly moving, you're constantly continuing. And if all you're looking at is there's a win, there's a finish line, then where does your next level of improvement, where does that next challenge come from? So great book. I recommend it highly. I think it's a fantastic read.
Yeah, awesome. Well, look, this has been great. If people want to connect with you, because I'm sure they will, what's the best way to connect with you?
Search for John Stavrakis on LinkedIn. Happy to connect. And if you're in Melbourne, happy to have a coffee. Always happy to have a chat. It's a great way to connect.
I can vouch for that. You are always happy to sit down and have a good coffee.
Always happy for a coffee.
But it has to be a good coffee.
It has to be a good coffee, Simon. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, John, thank you for being on Sessions. I'm sure we'll have you back another time. And thanks for making the time for us.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
Okay.
That's it for this session. Let us know what you think or recommend someone for a future session at cxii.com.au. This podcast is brought to you by the Customer Experience Innovation Institute. Thanks for joining us and tune in again soon to hear more CX sessions.